So now we're all together. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I hope lunch was well. Our was a bit of kind of short. And yeah, don't be afraid. We're not here to tell you that Composable Commerce is the answer to everything or every e-commerce question. Rather, we want to share our experiences and the story of using Shopware in a Composable Commerce project. And we've prepared a few slides for that. Of course, this is not the Holy Bible, but more like our found principles and made-up thoughts coming from a real-world project. But before we dive right into the project itself, let me quickly introduce to you who is speaking today. This is Thomas, our head of technology at blindwerk. What he does is managing our tech stack and as well as our tech team, of course. And he sets the main technical direction and decisions. Meanwhile, he is mentoring others like me, giving technical advice and making sure that projects have technologic fit, for example, in the project we will show to you. Please, Thomas, let them know a few things about myself and blindwerk.
It's a pleasure, Christoph. So this is Christoph, one of the developers at the Ecommerce team, or as we call them, squads. And he delivers e-commerce solutions at any scale, small or big. And with his active involvement in the Shopware community, he makes sure that we get the latest and greatest news and opportunities in the Shopware universe. At blindwerk, we are all digital architects, and we plan and manage complex digital solutions, which lead to scalable solutions. This is something that we do for around 200 customers in the DACH region, and it mostly takes place in the IoT and in the digital platform realm, as you can imagine, with around 20 people. With that in mind, what is this talk really about? I don't know about you, but I really love X Cassidy. And X Cassidy has this really great comic strip where one small pillar holds up an entire industry. And we had a client who had the similar situation. They had a system which was about to fall apart, and this talk introduces how we managed to go from fragility to stability again. To introduce you to this topic, Christoph will first let you know how we audited and did the requirements engineering so that we actually fulfilled what the client needed, not what they or we thought they needed. Then we will go over how we split our roadmap apart so that we could deliver faster. And then we will talk a little bit about architecture. And finally, we'll bring it all home with a few trade-offs and lessons learned in this journey. So Christoph, please take it away.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, every transformation project should start with understanding the reality, as Thomas said. But before discussing solutions, technologies, or architecture, we first needed to understand what was really actually happening and what we have to deal with. The existing platform had grown for years, and it was successful, yes, because it sold products. It handled a lot of business processes also, and there was lots of stuff that had accumulated over time and brought a lot of complexity. So the audit revealed something interesting. At first glance, the system looked like a classic e-commerce platform like you might know, or you can find them at small or medium businesses when you work in an agency or as a freelancer. But in case it was not that, the deeper we looked into that, the more we realized it had become much more than a shop system itself. Because over time, more and more responsibilities had been added to the shop system. And the problem wasn't that it lacked functionality itself, but the problem was that maintaining all this functionality became increasingly expensive. A lot of budget went into keeping things running instead of developing further features. And deployments always felt risky, which from a developer point of view is very unsettling. And even issues occurred that directly affected the customer's revenue, which is a no-go, as you can imagine. Yeah, the question became, how do we regain the ability to innovate coming from an overgrown monolith with excessive complexity, no single source of truth, and a talent for burning budget? We spent time, of course, with the stakeholders and translated business goals into architectural goals, because architecture should never exist just for its own sake. The vision was actually very straightforward. Excuse me, I missed the next step. The business wanted more innovation and less maintenance, so did we, and they wanted to become a leading shop in their segment and needed room for later expansion as well. But before designing future architecture, we still had to understand everything the current system was doing, especially because it was not developed by us. This was the reverse engineering phase, and it was probably one of the most eye-opening phases we had, because the Shopware system wasn't just an e-commerce platform anymore. It handled data synchronization with an ERP system. It supported smartphone app integrations. It generated complex product and variant logic on a asynchronous style, and it contained many more asynchronous processes in the background running on RabbitMQ, for example. Some of these processes had become business critical, as you can imagine. So before replacing or moving anything in the system, we had to understand what each of these processes actually did and why they existed. Understanding the system was only one side of the equation. The other side was understanding the people using it. So we had a requirements engineering phase. We looked beyond technology, and we analyzed business processes, and we talked to stakeholders in depth. After that, we also looked at customer journeys and user needs. So we cover both sides, the customer from our side and his customers as well. After that, we also looked at customer journeys and user needs. This resulted in roughly defined user storage, which we then separated into different groups. There's the first group. The first group was defined by what is really required to sell, so to run the business online successfully. And the second group was what was helping the business to become better and differentiate itself. Because once we knew what was essential and what was optional, we could create a roadmap. Couldn't we, Thomas?
Yes, and that's what we did. So as you can imagine, a project like this is a bit much to chew on. And to make this easier, we split it into two rough phases, and those phases, of course, into sprints. And the first phase being the MVP phase. We all know the acronym, but I think what gets the least attention is the V bit, the viability. Viability means meeting your customers' core business needs, either all of them or at least most of them, so that they can have a usable product. For a client who was already very successful in what they were doing, of course, this MVP was quite a bit larger than you would imagine for a greenfield project. The second phase is what we called the value or differentiation phase. Basically, it is where we want to do the innovation leap. Innovation leap here means we basically left out all the bells and whistles with the MVP, and now we bring all the bells and whistles, which means making it nicer to use, doing thoughtful experimentation, A/B testing, things like that, to make a product that the customers, the end customers, love. And to fulfill that from a technical point of view, we decided on a MACH-aligned architecture. MACH stands for Microservices, API first, cloud native, headless frontend. And now you can crash any party with one more acronym to go. But what does this mean really? Essentially, take the monolith, the big application, and slice it up. Bring it down into various applications that talk to each other and that have clearly defined contracts at the API boundary. And of course, with that goes that if you pull that out, you want a headless front end to pull together different systems. And you can see how this all works. Like anything in life, there of course are opportunities and risks with this. The big opportunities is that we can have applications that solely focus on one thing. And the main risk is, of course, that now you have more moving parts. So all of those parts, they need a regulated regimen in maintenance, and you really want to automate that process of maintenance to keep it efficient. And basically, we will see later how Shopware essentially works into this architecture and what other components we use. And Christoph will tell us how we did it.
Yeah, thanks. Before talking about the target architecture, it's useful to take a look where we started because one does not simply relaunch a complex monolith. And this diagram illustrates a familiar situation. The blue frame is the Shopware 6 monolithic system. Over time, more and more responsibilities were placed inside the system, as we talked about earlier, and every new requirement found its way into the shop. Where then? And eventually, the e-commerce platform became responsible for much more than e-commerce. The result wasn't a bad system itself, but it was simply a system carrying too many responsibilities. So the obvious question became, what should remain inside the shop and what should move elsewhere? The target architecture may look very similar, but in fact is not. We kept the blue frame, but it's transitioned from a monolithic design into a distributed Shopware PaaS environment, of which you might have earlier in the talk. I wanted to change the colors of the frame as well, but AI didn't let me, so be aware of that when you create diagrams with AI tools. And nevertheless, on this diagram, you can see we have placed our external applications and services on the left side, like ERP system, external search indexes, or external shopping apps. And their connection with the Shopware backend is now decoupled by bringing in our Workbench interface as dedicated platform. Each capability now has a more defined place to live. With that, Shopware stays focused on commerce, and additional concerns are separated where it makes sense. This creates flexibility and allows parts of the system to evolve independently. So, how does Shopware and its ecosystem fit into Composable Commerce, or MACH? When people hear MACH, they often immediately think about microservices. This is our first slide about the topic. So, when people, for us it was about starting to separate responsibilities out of the monolith. We moved functionality that wasn't actually commerce related out of the core shop, and Shopware remained focused on what it does best, being a powerful commerce engine. Additional capabilities became independent services where it needed to be. That means they can evolve, they can be scaled, and they can be deployed independently in the Shopware PaaS environment. When you have several services or apps running, they have to talk with each other. So this is where API first concept comes in, and it's becoming important that they can communicate to each other. Fortunately, Shopware already provides us strong APIs as part of its foundation. So we have the Store API, the Admin API, and the Sync API, which can even handle bulk operations and do stuff in an efficient way. And instead of tightly coupling systems together, services communicate now through clearly defined interfaces. And the benefit is flexibility, because you can exchange service or the way they communicate or the way the service takes place in the system. So different systems can change internally as long as they maintain the contract that is defined earlier. And once services communicate through APIs, the next question would be how we run and operate them. This is where we became cloud native. Cloud native is another buzzword, but I don't think you can crash a party with it. For us, it was mainly about operational efficiency. Running services independently allows us to scale only the parts that actually needed scaling. So we first had the bottleneck on the Shopware core because high loads occurred that were that were due to the app integration. So they fetched a lot of product data, and we had some things going on with additional services and ERP integrations, which created kind of virtual products. And this was all taking too long and resulted in downtimes in some cases. So we can scale all the parts up where we need to. And we don't have to scale the whole monolithic system because one common component experiences high load. This is what I just described to you. And managed infrastructure reduces operational overhead and risk, so our team can concentrate on developing features and bringing in value instead of maintaining servers or need to care about updates. The final component of the MACH concept is the customer-facing experience. This is where the headless frontend comes in, as Thomas mentioned before. And headless gives us freedom at the front-end layer. The front end is no longer tightly coupled to the back end. So we switched from the Twig storefront Shopware brings to us to the Shopware front ends, which also is covered by Shopware, of course. And we get a modern framework. We can connect multiple data sources to that and build experiences more flexible. It's powered by Nuxt and Vue and features basic commerce logic, so you don't have to start from scratch by implementing a Shopware card, a card itself, or a customer account, or stuff like that. And you can even communicate to the Shopware core or the back end because the roots are already there. So this is nice to have, of course. And that allowed us faster experimentation and faster delivery of customer-facing features and improvements. So that's how we applied the MACH principles in practice. But every architectural decision comes with trade-off.
And the first thing, of course, we're an agency. So will MACH rule them all? Is it the one-and-done architecture that you just need to apply and everything's great? Of course not, right? Every client, every project has their own limits and their own, basically operational designs that need to be adhered to. To be more clearly here, if you have, as I already mentioned, if you have a composable systems, you've got more cogs turning in the machine. So if one of those cogs experiences a defect, for example, a downtime, slowdown, whatever, it can pull the entire application with it. And that is, of course, bad. So you need to guard against that. And that is one of those things that you don't have with a monolith. And then what you really also need to take into account is that it's not just about building, but it's about debugging, testing, and it's about running the show for quite a few years. So all in all, MACH can help you if the answer to iteration speed is fast, or if essentially the things that you do tend to multiply, then MACH can help you keep it manageable. But we really want you to take this out of the talk. A monolith is a perfectly good design, and it might be the solution for you. And if there's anything that we want you to take from this talk, then we want you to understand that the key decision was not to just relaunch a shop, but it was to restructure processes, responsibilities, and technologies into a scalable future. And Shopware 6, Shopware PaaS, helped us fulfill that goal. If your shop needs a trim, don't hesitate coming to us after the talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much for the talk. We will get into a bit of Q&A. I think we had about 7 minutes, no? Yeah, okay. I checked before, so last time, in the last talk, I messed up.
Yeah, that
okay,
was
but we quickly need to get to you. So Christoph, you are driving an electric high-power enduro bike, like an e-bike on steroids, basically. And Thomas is a computer archaeologist and has nothing to do with magic cards, at least to my knowledge. Maybe you are doing that. No, okay. And you have nothing to do with medieval festivals, okay, which is also a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I think so too.
Anyway, so I will start off a question, and then you can hold up your hand, and Michael will come to you with a microphone, and then you will ask a question and get an answer. So with MACH, it is the thing that people say, okay, you are just moving code complexity into organizational complexity in the contracts between parts. What would be your answer to that? Is it that bad? Like, is it still complex but in a different spot?
Yeah, it's when you first take a look on the system, you see a lot of functionality and it's distributed in different services, but you can really concentrate on the app or the service itself. And for the capsule makes it easier to understand what is happening, as well as the contracts and APIs. So you know what comes in, you know what must happen in the service, and you know what comes out of it. So it's more predictable than a monolithic system.
So you're not cutting down on overall complexity, but you are adding better predictability and stability, I think.
Yeah,
right?
That's the point.
I'd like to add a little bit to that, just for the meta talk, essentially. So you cannot reduce your application down to a complexity level below what it really has.
Yeah.
There are situations where people try to abstract into a way to forget about reality, but reality will hit you someday, so you cannot remove that. That's The other is, of course, accidental complexity, which is what you can remove and what you should strive for, but the real world will always catch up to you.
Yeah, so that is more about mastering the complexity.
Exactly, and one important note that I forgot to talk about was that these applications can move at different paces. So if you've got, for example, for our middleware, we have a very stable technology that changes roughly every 2 years. So except for really light maintenance, nothing needs to be done to it. So yeah, we don't need to keep the pace of Shopware just to add some new entity for ERP synchronization.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone has a question and wants to ask? Yeah, we have at least one. That's good. We like questions.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. My question or my expectation was to get more about the composable frontends, really, how you implemented it, which challenges did you had with this, for example, for the checkout, for the payment plugins. You know, there are so many challenges, so can you share on this part exactly? So how did you manage it, or what the biggest challenges were to implement composable frontends?
Yeah, that's very specific to the project, but we can maintain the answers to that question maybe later, because we haven't brought any material now, but maybe we'll see at the SCOOC next year.
And I can also maybe rephrase this a little bit. How hard was it to work with third-party plugins, or did you use any?
Not right now, no.
Okay, because this is actually the point where a lot of people get into problems. Like, a lot of store plugins are really nice and developed for the Shopware storefront, but as the functionality is just not there in composable frontends, because who does not know composable frontends? Great. You're in the right talk.
One plugin you could say is the search index, the external. So we're feeding something like OpenSearch externally and fetch data from that. And of course, there is no standard integration into Composable Commerce, so composable frontends. So it's covering most parts, but not everything, as you can imagine. There are lots of plugins and features. So not every part is implemented or is served to us by Shopware. So we have to take care of that, of course. And I think that's the heavy lifting you have to.
What level did you start on in composable frontends, like just the SDK or the full demo implementation?
We took the Vue starter template.
The Vue starter template.
Yeah. So basically, some things were there as composables, but we didn't want to start from scratch, and we didn't want to use the demo shop. So
the middle ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the middle ground. Yeah.
I think this is somewhere where you can also let your audit, take care of this a little bit. Really ask yourself, how much of the plugins do you really need? Because this is something that we have also seen here. There was essential plugin creep, where just like 10% of some plugins were used, which would have resulted in one entity extension. And that's it. So we opted to just not have the plugin and just write the entity extension. And this was the case for almost everything. So this is why it doesn't hurt us so much, maybe.
Yeah. Also, a relaunch like that is very nice for some A/B testing. What's actually useful. Okay, actually we're now already at the end of the time of the talk, and the next talk will be at 2:45, so you have a little bit of time. And then on this stage you will get a reality check with Stefan Hamann. So, and until then, thanks for your talk. See you in roughly 15 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.